Thanks to the COVID-19 pandemic, it feels exceptionally longer than 3 and a bit years since the Pixel 3 series was officially unveiled back in October 2018. With most people out here holding onto devices longer than ever before, just how does the Pixel 3 fare in 2022? What did it do well and what has it done badly? Now that Google has officially dropped support for the handset, well, this is our Pixel 3 post-mortem. Thanks for watching 9to5 Google here on YouTube. Remember to thumbs up, hit subscribe and then tap the bell icon to be among the first to watch our upcoming videos. In the build-up to Made by Google 2018, leak after leak revealed everything ahead of the keynote. And the design terms, or at least in design terms, it is a throwback that has elements of the previous generation, the Pixel 2 series, but you can kind of see Google becoming more confident in their ability to design a smartphone with neat little personable touches here and there, which are highlights of the Pixel series. For me, the Pixel 3 is the most comfortable product that Google has produced, maybe save the Pixel 4a. The soft rounded corners and the frosted back mean it has, to steal a term from one of my colleagues Carl Bradshaw, the best hand feel of a Pixel to date. It's borderline perfect with a wide body and a thin profile, but the usage of glass at the rear, that frosted glass, gives that even in mid-2022, I feel that the Pixel 3 is kind of unique and sturdy and self-assured, unlike some other phones out there. I used the Pixel 3 XL daily and nightly until the launch of the Pixel 4 series, and then afterwards I did use this phone as my go-to test device for numerous Android updates and beta releases. I have to say that at least in my case it has aged very gracefully. The display has a few little nicks here and there, but overall it is in beautiful condition. Now that isn't going to be the case for everyone out there, but even without a case, the only real degradation that I've noticed has been on that frosted back panel, which is great to feel, but it has some weird lines from being in and out of my pocket over the past 36 or so months, thousands and thousands of times. At launch, this felt like the end of the aluminium Pixel chassis, and the Pixel 3 XL adopted that frosted glass, kind of glass sandwich setup, but 2020 of course threw up some more surprises. We didn't know that at the time. Granted, this isn't a huge departure from the Pixel 5's bio-resin finish and aluminium build that is available. It certainly feels like a Google-made phone in the same way is what I'm trying to say here. The frosted glass finish and curved edges, they feel really good in the hand. And the soft frosted glass itself is actually particularly soft to the touch. It's almost a shame to put it in a case. I'd love to see this return on future Pixel smartphones which have kind of adopted that glossy look, which sometimes can feel a little bit cheap. So if you didn't know, the Pixel 3 and 3 XL share most of the same core similarities but differ in one key area, and that is that massive display notch. In reality, the notch was never quite as horrific as it was probably made out to be. Yes, it's large, heck it's borderline offensive to some people out there, but if you put that to the back of your mind, it's simply a non-issue like most notches on smartphones. You're also getting a dedicated wide-angle selfie camera packed in there too, which, although not perfect, was an interesting addition to say the least. You'll find a 6.3-inch QHD Plus AMOLED display on the Pixel 3 XL and a 5.5-inch Full HD Plus AMOLED display sans the notch on the Pixel 3. Both displays here I think are still excellent here in 2022, but don't quite get bright enough when compared to the recent iterations. At 60Hz as well, that display kind of starts to feel a little bit behind the curve with those aging internals as well, slowing things down a little bit. Things are just not quite as buttery smooth as they were in years prior, but almost all content still manages to look great on the Pixel 3 and particularly 3 XL's QHD Plus display. Of course, a huge notch as well. That is frustrating for landscape video viewing. Luckily, neither phones though have been afflicted by the blue tint that hampered the 2 XL released a year before this duo, so Google did learn from its previous mistake. A bigger problem in hindsight though is the non-uniform bezels, and these drove me crazy when switching back from devices released at the same time period with smaller bezels on all sides, but I will note that there is room for a bottom firing speaker and that top earpiece speaker, which results in genuinely superb audio. That's a big deal given the lack of a headphone port at a time when many other flagship smartphones still offered that input option. As a flagship Pixel package, the 3 and 3 XL took some of the best design elements of the Pixel 2 and 2 XL, then added in an IP68 rating for the first time, and of course made a few more personable touches that do make the duo all more approachable. The design is understated, which is potentially a criticism you could also throw at previous Pixels, but a reason the hardcore fanbase loves the series nonetheless. 2022 has seen the Pixel 3 receive its final update in the form of Android 12, and the February 2022 security patch also marks the end of Google's official support window. This is going to mean if you want to persevere with this handset, you're going to have to try third-party ROMs if you do want to continue with this device in the long term. For me though, the Pixel 3 was properly transformed back with Android 10. It added many features that were needed at launch, including a dedicated dark mode, proper gesture navigation, smarter battery saver modes, a complete UI overhaul, plus further 50 extra tweaks and changes on top of that. Since then, we've seen Android 11 and now Android 12 arrive on the Pixel 3, and it's essentially the same core experience as the newer devices. In theory, you're walking around with a Pixel 5 level experience without the associated hardware. The comparisons between the Pixel 3 and the Pixel 5 are pretty important though, as the Qualcomm Snapdragon 845 and the 765G found in the Pixel 5 stack up very, very closely. Other than the 90Hz panel and some other features not yet available or exclusive to 2020's Pixel flagship, the 3 will perform just as well as the Pixel 5. Putting that into perspective for a second, the Pixel 3 can actually outperform the Pixel 5 in certain scenarios, and if you've held onto the Pixel 3, you're probably feeling a little bit smug right about now. For people looking to hold on to their device a little longer, that is actually pretty huge. The Pixel 3 and 3 XL kind of sit on the cusp of what you would and should expect from a 2022 mid-ranger, and it's here where former flagship phones certainly offer the best longevity factor, as time doesn't necessarily diminish the daily experience all too drastically, and that's very apparent here. Unfortunately though, it's not all perfect, as there are a number of problems that do affect the software experience here. Firstly, and an oversight, the 4GB of onboard RAM is the biggest performance hurdle to overcome with the Pixel 3 and 3 XL, and it's one of the most prominent hardware decisions that Google really got wrong here. You'll see things like apps thrown out of memory more often than any current generation Pixel, and it means that things like multitasking can be severely inhibited as a result. What's impressive given the Snapdragon 845 processor is now getting a little long in the tooth though, is actually the gaming performance. You can play some of the most demanding 3D titles, of course at diminished graphical settings, and this is undoubtedly the benefit of this flagship processor and highlights the importance of Google's future tensor efforts in the Pixel 6 series and upcoming smartphones. The rear fingerprint scanner is still as fast as it was back at launch, while Android 12 runs pretty damn well too. Plus, there's the added bonus here of the active edge squeeze gesture that is as good as it ever was, and something that was removed with the Pixel 4 series. It's something we'd really love to return as Google attempts to find a new home for the assistant activation via corner swipes, now a power button press, which is all available as part of Android 12. A growing number of reports in late 2021 though saw the Pixel 3 and 3 XL devices start to become a little bit unresponsive or bricking completely after random shutdowns. These kind of problems have been steadily fixed over time, but because devices are long out of warranty, any future problems will likely be left unresolved. I always think it's a blast coming back to the Pixel 3 camera setup, as it still stacks up admirably given its age and limited solo rear lens system. That said, while it's not immediately obvious, newer Pixels using the same Sony IMX363 sensor kind of seem to squeeze a little bit more out of this same main sensor setup. Sure, you don't have quite as many modes as the latest and greatest, but the Pixel 3 series has always produced wonderful results, and given that it has the same sensor as the 3A, right through to the Pixel 5A and even the upcoming Pixel 6A, you'll get comparable images. That said, the tuning is not quite identical from device to device, which means some slight variations depending on the model that you're using. At times, I've also found features such as the portrait mode to be less accurate than newer counterparts, and the night sight low light mode has seen major improvements over the years with each subsequent Pixel release. However, looking back at all of the images I've taken with this smartphone since 2018, I'm still always impressed and happy to share the best of the bunch, which is something that can't necessarily be said of all smartphones released around the same time period. Since updating to Android 12 though, I've noticed the camera UI can be more responsive, or at least is more responsive than it was back in Android 11. This could have been my unit, but it was sluggish at times in the previous OS build, and it was a little annoying when trying to take photos quickly. Selfies, they also still look great, but the wide angle shooter, while it might be great for group shots, it would have been better served at the rear as part of a dual camera setup there. Another sad bit of news related to the camera setup that some of you out there still might not be aware of is that Google has now officially ended the free unlimited original quality Google Photos storage for the Pixel 3 series. This ended actually back in January 2022, but anything you happen to store online up until then, you will still be counting towards your unlimited storage quota, and you will get unlimited storage moving forward using the storage saver tier. Every cloud has a silver lining after all. Like most made by Google devices, the Pixel 3, at least at this stage of 2022, might not be the all-day device you're hoping for. Yes, back in its day it had reasonable battery longevity, especially back at the launch period, but without the adaptive battery boosts provided with Android 11 and an aging internal cell, I will say that my Pixel 3 XL does often need a late afternoon top-up to ensure that it lasts a full day. Battery degradation is something you can mitigate or minimise, but not escape entirely. Charging for daily over years and years, or at least 3 years at this point, means that holding a charge is something the Pixel 3 and 3 XL struggle with at this point in 2022, even with those adaptive battery saver modes which were added in subsequent and previous Android OS builds. A battery replacement is certainly something we highly recommend if you do plan on sticking with 2018's best Pixel device. Google stuck with 18-watt charge speeds via USB-C cable for the Pixel 3, but it actually added wireless charging for the first time, but in typical Google fashion, it was a little bit confusing. The original Pixel stand and subsequently the second generation first-party charger allow you to top up this device at 10 watts, but with any other wireless charging pad, you'll be limited to 5 watts, even though the UI sometimes will tell you it's charging rapidly. This has still not been fixed with software updates, and it's something that is a little bit confusing. Google seems to be good at that, especially when it comes to charge speeds. So in essence, the Pixel 3 and 3 XL, through the lens of 2022, happened to be a strange duo. Understandably, the XL variant was ridiculed for that bathtub-style notch, but both devices were actually overall really solid, as alluded to in our original review over 3 years ago. It doesn't necessarily help that the Pixel 3 was also followed by the Pixel 2, which is often cited by enthusiasts and hardcore Pixel fans as the best of the bunch to date. Heck, it's worth noting we can sometimes be the Pixel series' worst critics at times, but the Pixel 3 and 3 XL seemingly hold up admirably at this early stage of 2022, now that the support window has officially ended. While the hardware was fairly standard for a 2018 flagship, banking on the software experience means that everything kind of falls into place without much fanfare. If you though were to ask us if we recommend the Pixel 3 and 3 XL here in early 2022, despite the fact that we think it's a little bit underappreciated, sadly, it's going to be a no. Given the lack of official updates moving forward and the frustrating lack of RAM, you're better off looking to something like the Pixel 4a 5G, itself an underrated Pixel. Sandwiched between the Pixel 2 and the Pixel 4, the Pixel 3 is certainly a quiet, unassuming addition to the series that managed to get a lot right, but a fair amount wrong on top of that. I want to know though if you've clung on to the Pixel 3 and 3 XL since launch. Is it criminally underappreciated in your opinion? Or if you've also had problems, hardware problems or bugs or software related issues and faults, be sure to let us know down below. It's always interesting to hear the real world experience of people who've hung on to this device since it was available. Hopefully though, you enjoyed this look at 2018's flagship made by Google phone. But until next time, this is Damien with 9to5 Google saying thanks for watching, and I will speak to you later.